helped me to shape this presentation. And in particular, at my present congregation, we've been doing a lot to invest in the area of church marketing. That's why I was asked to do this in particular. So we have a marketing consultant who's helping us for a year to shape our overall marketing strategy, and she's really helped me pull this together. And then we also have a person who helps with daily marketing tasks. She's called our marketing manager, and she and I work on that together, the daily level. And then there's a variety of other marketing professionals that have been a part of this. So my church size where I serve is about 70 people in person a Sunday, 30 people online, if that helps you. And we're video recording this, so I think the clicker's not working, Beth, let's see. Okay, we got it. All right. So these are the people who have contributed to the presentation. You can see there, grateful to all of them. You'll find resources for this presentation at this QR code, or if you have the digital copy of the presentation that you can find in the Google Shared Drive folder found at that link, you can click that link, take you to the folder. There's all sorts of stuff in there. You can find a digital copy of this packet in the presentation, but also all the articles that I'll be referencing or I've read as a part of the claims that I'm making in this presentation are found there. And there's a resource folder found there that has tons of marketing materials that will help you. So I really recommend you to go check that out later. All right, so let's talk about the structure of the presentation. Our presentation has 3 components today. We have, in the why section, this is our theory section related to church marketing. Then we'll go into the what next, and that's the application, what we need to be doing. And if time allows, finally, we'll discuss the how, which is how do we facilitate all of this. If we don't get to the how, most of it's in the slides and in the resource folder, so you'll get that content one way or another. Okay? So we're going to do the what section. The why section. And our why section has three sub-whys that are a part of it, okay, that just if that helps you. And I'll address questions at the end. So if you save your questions, then I'll leave 10 minutes and we can talk through your questions. Okay, so the church leadership. This is the first why, is why are we here? This is a critical question for the church leadership to be able to answer, because when they're able to answer it, they're able to communicate that through the church marketing to a broader audience. So here are some components to think of when the leadership is asking that question. I think it's not working again, the clicker. Okay, now we got it. So here we go. So we'll ask, what is our mission? What is our vision? What are our values, our goals, and our key statistics? These are all critical components when you're building a strategic plan for your congregation. We're not going to be going into depth into these, but as you fill these out, again, it will help you as you communicate with others. I'm going to give you a great resource that will help you to do this if you haven't already done so as a church. Let's look at some questions related to at the broader strategic planning level that specifically relate to church marketing. Okay? So the first is, who is our audience? Okay, we'll see there. There we go. Then, what 3 things make us unique? And how are we meeting people's needs? So we'll talk more about a second of who is our audience. 3 things that make us unique. So in marketing parlance, this is called the uniques that an organization has. And when you can winnow it down to just 1, 2, or 3 of them, that can help you. And think about this in terms of what makes you unique in your local community. Because at a broader level, there's probably what you're doing someone else is doing, but in your local community, maybe there's something that really does make you stand out. And then we'll talk more about what are people's needs. How do we communicate that we offer something that meets a specific need? So we'll do that in a second here. Okay. This is a series of books on strategic planning. And the first one, if you read, and nothing else, I would say read Traction by Gino Wickman. Excellent book. This is a part of what's called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS, and that's used all around the world by businesses. So this is a business book. You have to translate it for a church, but it is the simplest and clearest book I've ever found on strategic planning, and some of its ideas are underneath this presentation, so I'd recommend that to you and everything else there. Okay, so who is our audience? So I have a question for you. If you market to everyone, you market to no one. That's it. So we need to figure out who we're specifically marketing to. And that can be a shift. Because I know I've been in committee meetings before and people say, well, we have to reach everybody. But, we have to get more specific than that. Okay? So here's two options that Barna Group suggests that the church consider in terms of specific audiences to market to. The first is the love Jesus but not the church. All right? And the second are the spiritual seekers. The second group has another name you may hear at times, the spiritual but not religious. That's also who they're referring to as spiritual seekers. So let's look at each group and consider which one we should be reaching. So again, all this comes from Barna. So Barna defines the love Jesus but not the church as those who self-identify as Christian and who strongly agree that their religious faith is very important in their life, but are de-churched. They have attended, in the past, they've attended church, but haven't done so in the last 6 months or more. So this group, they have an intense relationship with Jesus. They are very much Christian, but they don't see the organized church as essential to deepening their relationship with Jesus. Generally, this group is not interested in connecting with the United Methodist Church. Yes?
They don't want to do the work.
I'm not sure I would make that judgment. But they don't see the church as necessary to their growth. And part of what we do need to communicate to people is the importance of being in an organized community. I think, to your point, is essential. So, interestingly, this group tends to be much more politically conservative or moderate. So bear that in mind, because you will see how the spiritual seekers are the exact opposite. And that can shape what they're looking for and how they see the world, okay? So then let's talk about the spiritual seekers. So Communications says, based on Barna's research, because Communications and Barna have been doing a lot of this research into spiritual seekers for the last 10 years. So they write, a spiritual seeker is defined as one who considers themselves spiritual, socially conscious, and seeking meaning in their lives, but who is not affiliated with the church. There are an estimated 36 million seekers in the U.S. between 25 to 49 years old. So those are primarily millennials and maybe younger Gen Xers. So this is who Communications recommends that we reach. They also care deeply. As you read more materials about this, there's an excellent article in your Google folder. If you go into articles, it's called Spiritual Seekers. Read that article if you read nothing else. It's really worth your time. But this is where this is coming from. So the spiritual seekers also care a lot about social causes. So communicating. Let's say immigration could be one. Or they say hunger is another one this group tends to really care about. Or animal rights. Okay? Local community service is very important to them. I love the United Methodist Church of New Lenox's website, because right on their homepage they list just 2 or 3 things that they're prioritizing as a church, and local community service is front and center. When you click it, even though they don't do this every week, but they say, here's the 10 ways we can help connect you into local community service. I think that's just a great example. They're focused on inclusion. So when we are a reconciling church, I think they're looking for the flag, the rainbow flag, or other indicators that everyone is welcome in your church. That can be helpful for this group. And spiritual practices. So this group tend to, as Barna says, blend together a lot of faiths. They also tend to see God as in the tree, not that through the tree they perceive God, meaning like God is one with nature. We teach that God is above nature, but is a part of God. But they don't do that. But what's interesting is they really prioritize spiritual practices. Their spirituality is hugely important to them. Well, we have this whole rich tradition of spiritual practice we can offer them. And the group, they tend to be politically progressive and moderate, the mere opposite of the other group. Okay, let's look at some more specific interests of the spiritual seekers as they're exploring connecting with a faith community. So first, just see the statistic on the left that 44% are willing to visit a United Methodist Church in person. That statistic has increased, as we'll see in a moment, significantly over the last 10 years. And we'll talk more about that. So let's think about this kind of in 3 categories, not 4. So this first is like the thought process a spiritual seeker is going through to even consider going to a church, whatever church that is, all right? And their need for a church. This is like, why should I go to your church? And this is, why should I stay engaged with your church? So let's just look at each of these for a second. So why should I even go to church in the first place from their perspective? Well, they start to realize that they want to develop spiritually. They need support with a life issue. They want to reconnect with their Christian roots. Traditions really matter to people a lot. It defines our identity, all right? And they want their children to learn about God. And then why do they connect with your church and walk in the door for the first time? Well, they've heard good things. Really hold that in mind. That is critical in marketing. There is a buzz about your church in town. They seem like they could see themselves there. This is why we need to have diverse people in photographs and videography of the church. That really matters. Okay? They are personally invited. That's critical. And they know that the church was active in serving in the local community. They're really looking for that, evidence of it. And then and listen, I mean, this is Methodism, right? They got to see that we practice a practical faith, not just a faith, that's intellectual. And then finally, why are they going to stick around after they come? Well, they feel accepted, all right? And it's the whole church. It's an atmosphere of acceptance is so important. They are welcomed during their first visit, all right? See your church as your house, and you're welcoming them. That's so important, and you have a great welcome team. And then this is critical. The teaching is insightful, especially the sermon. And I've looked through several of these lists, like what are people looking for when they go to a church. And consistently at the top is either number one or number two is not just the worship service, although that's very important to people, but it is the preaching. And the fact of the matter is, whether we like it or not, they are analyzing our preaching and wondering how our preaching stacks up to someone else in town. It's the thought process it seems that they seem to be going through. Okay, so I think these insights can influence the ministries that we are offering as a church. And if we see gaps in our ministry offerings compared to what they're looking for, that can then help us as a leadership to think about creating new ministries or making adjustments in where our resources are. Let's talk a little bit more about spiritual seekers and just the shift that we've seen over the years from Communications. So they write, among spiritual seekers, we've seen a willingness to visit a United Methodist Church increase from 17% in 2015 to its highest ranking of 47% in 2021. We have also seen a recent upswing in the favorable perception of the denomination. The indication is that our seeker-focused communications and advertising campaigns are effectively reaching our target audience. So I think this is a great example of our apportionment dollars at work, and how Communications has been for the last 10 or so years really investing its marketing efforts reaching spiritual seekers, and it is leading to a tangible shift in this group's overall perception of the denomination that then trickles down to the local level for us. And that when we then begin to reach out to this group, we benefit from all of that, from what the denomination is doing. They're more primed to hear a message from us. Let's look at the next chart. This comes from PRRI, and this is an organization that engages in religious research in America, and they publish their findings each year. This is just one graph from their more extensive report. And I just want to show you some trends that I think are very interesting as we think about the importance of church marketing. So you'll see here these bottom two lines. Okay, the bottom one is Catholics in America. This one is religious affiliation of mainline Protestants. This is white evangelicals. And these are the unaffiliated. Now, both the Love Jesus but not the church and the spiritual seekers are contained within this, along with other groups. But let's just look at some trends. First, let's see that while all of the Protestants and Catholics we have been facing decline, notice that the main line and Catholics have seen far less decline in the last 15 or so years compared to the evangelicals. They're half of their size compared to where they were several years ago. And I think so when some people say, well, the church is in a serious spiral, people could be talking about this, because it depends what part of the church we're talking about. We are seeing some decline, but notice this. The decline has leveled out in the last 5 or so years. It hasn't been at the same pace, or it's been flat. And then notice this here. Look at this parallel structure we see here in the data, that during the pandemic years, specifically, the mainline church saw a significant uptick in engagement, where the unaffiliated had a mirroring dip. Well, they were coming. They were leaving and coming into our churches. Why? Well, they needed support, right? We looked at the motivators coming in our door. But I think this shows us that there is really a market here of people that are not engaged in the church today, that are curious. And I think through more intentional marketing efforts, we can reach them. And this is relevant because I've been at committee tables before where people at the church say things like, well, who can we reach? Is this really going to be worth it? And I think you can show them that and say the market really does show that there are people hungry to come into the church. in addition to people who are just moving or transferring churches. These are people who, again, are not in the church today. Our next sub-why, our second one for the church leadership asks is, why do we need a church marketing plan? We've already been answering that in part, but let's go a little deeper. So I have a question for you. Between these two options, which one is primary? What do you think? Just yell it out. Inform people or inspire them with church marketing? That's it, exactly. Now, both are needed, okay? But being aware of the order of these, or their importance, matters. So when we inform people, we're doing public relations work. Everybody hears all the events we offer, okay? Now, we need to do that, but it's secondary. Think of that, at least in my mind, I think of that as 30% of what church marketing is, not 70%. Then you're inspiring people, that's the 70%. That's the real emphasis. And we're going to talk about all of how do you inspire people. Inspiration sustained over time is engagement. That's what you're looking for. So how do we inspire and engage people? Well, we speak to their why. And maybe you've read the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek. If you haven't, it is really top shelf book. You should read it. So Sinek explains through his research that how do we persuade people? What's the most effective way? And he says, well, it goes back to speaking to a person's why, then their how, and then their what. The why is our mission and vision. The how is our values and virtues. Finally, the what is our ministries and actions. And he explains that a lot of times you'll see in marketing that people talk first to the what, and then they move into the why. He says, but in fact, what we want to be doing is speaking from the why and out to the what. And it makes all the difference in the world in just communications in general. So here he maps the structure of the golden circle over a rudimentary structure of the human brain. And he explains from his research that when we talk to people's why and how, we're speaking to the limbic brain. And the limbic brain is primarily driven by emotion, okay? And what's interesting is that even people who would describe themselves as very logic-driven as a personality type, even for those people, that at a subconscious level, many of our decisions, more than we realize, are driven by our emotions. And then our logic comes into the picture. Just speaking in very broad strokes, okay? So we want to be speaking first here to people's emotions and then speak to the logic. So what's interesting here is that the neocortex, this is where the language center of the brain is. And this is often why people talk first to all of the details, right? All the listing of ministries, because that's our language, right? It takes more work for us to communicate to someone's emotions because that's not where the language center is found, but we can do it if we are intentional, and we will see that people tend to be much more persuaded by this when we make this flip. And the conductor is just showing that the neocortex is like the conductor who pulls together all the information of the brain like conducting an orchestra to create a beautiful sound. Let's talk about the catalysts that we can pull on to speak to people's why and how. So first is that they are a part of a movement. Okay, we're a part of the church spread across millennia, right? This is the kingdom of God, the divine reign. We're part of the United Methodist Church all over the world doing life-changing ministry. We're part of a movement. We witness to what God is doing. We're not just bringing food to a food pantry. We are the hands and feet of Christ, fulfilling our calling in Matthew 25 to care for the poor and hungry. We communicate aspects of our strategic plan that really motivates people. Now, we're going to talk about in a second, how do you communicate those points without just saying, here's a listing of our values, right? People don't want that. But there's a way that you can do that that's very compelling. You talk about how the church is making an impact in the community. And then, last of all, but it's still very important to do, we communicate how we are meeting people's needs. And just finally, a few other reasons why you might need a church marketing plan is to fulfill our biblical calling, to witness to our faith and grow God's church, to identify how our church can best communicate what we offer to our primary audience. Okay, you got to figure out, what do we offer? What are they looking for? Where's the connection? How do we leverage that? The plan's going to help you do that. Sorry, my clicker is delayed. There we go. And then to lead the church out of its four walls and into the streets and social media feeds of the people of our surrounding community. Friends, we have to go to them on their turf, right? Not expect everyone to come to us. Now, we want them, of course, to engage with the church and come into the building, but we've got to have the order of steps correct. To motivate that behavior, we have to first go out to them and meet them where they are. Isn't that what Jesus did? You know, that was his whole ministry. He didn't sit in the synagogue all day and say, "Come to me." All right. So let's talk about the conduit for our why. You know, what do we put the why in to connect with people? And that is people storytelling. Okay? So, tell me a story. Look at this photo here. Okay, a photo is 1,000 words, right? So, a photo can be a great way that we tell our story in a visual way. So just try to put yourself there. Tell me what's happening in this photo. Just yell it out to me. Notice the details. Exactly, they're singing, right? Okay. It's a worship service probably, right? They're singing in worship. What else? Notice their costumes. Yep. So it's a Christmas pageant, right? Okay, so we're a church with a Christmas pageant. That's interesting, you know. And look at this. A youth, right? With older adults, so multi-generational, right? All of this subtly, it's a story that you begin to put yourself in and is communicated and sticks with people. Let's keep talking about why storytelling is effective. And when I think about storytelling, I think about Leonard Sweet and his great book From Tablet to Table, because he's done an extensive amount of research into the importance of storytelling. So he says, when you tell a story, you are transferring your experiences directly to the brains of those listening. They feel what you feel, think what you think, smell what you smell. You are teleporting your story to their brain. Research on the brain activity of storytellers demonstrates that the brain patterns of their audiences can start to mimic their own. Isn't that fascinating? So have you ever been in a movie and you lose track of time? You pass out of time. All of a sudden, 2.5 hours has gone by. And it's like, you don't even know how that happened. That's called a story trance. And that speaks to the power of story. Friends, in the church, we have these incredible stories and experiences. And when we leverage storytelling in a variety of ways, not just in the sermon, but in marketing, we are transferring our life-changing experiences in God's church into the brains and hearts of other people. And that allows the Holy Spirit to move and inspire them to become curious about participating in the life of the church. Okay, one other quote from Sweet. There he talks about the narraphore. So he says, the narraphore precedes principles, and stories and images are the crucibles of thought. Metaphors are the primary path to perceive reality, including the reality of God. To testify to truth is not to versify, but to storify. So a narraphore is a narrative and a metaphor combined together. And Sweet's point is that this has been found to be the most effective in reaching people. His marketers leverage this all the time. You pair a story with an image. It's that specific combination, okay? It's like smashing two atoms together. Well, friends, listen, we are master storytellers, right? That's our bread and butter. We can so easily do this as a church. This is 100% within our wheelhouse. We just have to be more intentional of connecting that into marketing. So I would commend this TED Talk video to you. We're not going to watch it today, but you can click the link if you're looking at the digital version of the PowerPoint on the Google Shared Drive, or just search for this online. The title of the talk is Stories Persuade People by Dr. Michael J. Epler, and he explains that he and his team have surveyed thousands of interactions in the market in businesses, whether between two employees or between an employee and a customer, to come away with the three ways that we tend to communicate with people to persuade them. So the first is, and the most effective, is to combine story, he says, with imagery. And he says metaphors are critical to this. Well, it's Jesus, right? Jesus knew all this. That's the most effective. The second one are diagrams. So don't underestimate diagrams. We really need them because they're still very visual, but they're moderately effective. And least effective of all, bullet points. Okay? How many PowerPoints have you seen? The whole page is text, right? You know, we need that, he says, but we got to do that after we've done the storytelling, or we contain the bullet points within a broader narrative or image for people, and that is least effective but still needed. And then what are the fruits of such storytelling and marketing? Well, we may see more visitors, higher visitor retention rates, increases to overall membership engagement, spiritual growth, better attendance. Let's see if that triggers there. There we go. Increased giving and more responses to CTAs or calls to action. So it's good to put a CTA within, say, an email or a social media post. You're asking people to do something at the end of the day as you're communicating with them. Okay, our final sub-why, which is a visitor will ask, why should I engage with your church? So what you have in front of you, I would like you to turn now, if you could, to the document in your packet called the Church's Core Process. But what you see there, and you'll see it on your document too at the top of the page, is this circle. And as Gino Wickman explains in the book Traction, any organization has a process that is at the core of what it does. And I suggest to you that this is our general core process for most churches of what we're trying to do, of how to pull people in, how to affect change in their lives, have them grow spiritually, and then they begin to go all the way around the circle again to helping others come into the church. Okay? And I'm not going to go through every point in this document. I'm just going to highlight a couple of things for us, and then you can read it more carefully later on. So in the first stage is the initial impressions. A potential visitor needs to hear good things about the church. A word of mouth from a friend is just absolutely critical, and it can take a long time of consistent marketing in a community to create that buzz that causes your people and other people in the community to talk about the church. That makes a big difference. Think of that as a long and coming fruit. You're always planting seeds for that. Your social media content, that's a way that you're connecting with people. You can reach thousands of people with one video post. Like, think about that. That is a very valuable usage of time, and again, shapes that perception. That maybe they've seen the church out in the community, right? We go to them. Don't expect them to come to us. So you're at the farmer's market. You're at a community barbecue. Or you're offering events that draw the community into something they're really looking for that's fun. And then they can see themselves there. They can see themselves in the photos and the videos. And here's, I think, perhaps most important of all, that they receive a personal invitation from someone. That's very powerful. What a difference it is when you know you can go to a new church and sit with someone that you know, right, versus just being there by yourself. So then we go to the first visit. Now, when does the first visit begin? Now, we'd think it's when they walk in the door, but not in our world today. The first visit starts on our website. Now, what we're trying to do is in all these interactions on social media and out in the community is we want them to go to our website. And the website is like the front door of the church. And that's when they start to then learn about the church and really explore it. They very well may watch an online worship service. That's why online worship is so important for all of us to have. And then after they start to learn about us and experience us online, then they connect into one of our in-person ministries, ideally. But this insight then affects how we build the website. I've been a part of a long-standing debate of who do you build the website for, the congregation or the visitor or both. And I'd submit to you that you build it for the visitor, first and foremost, if not even exclusively, and make it as simple as possible to persuade the visitor. Now you say, but hold on, Scott. Well, how does our church interact digitally with the church beyond just social media? There's things on the website we need. That's where you need a church app that we're going to talk about later. And that then becomes a separate but connected digital space for the current community. Okay, so they engage with you on Wellline. Then they come to an in-person ministry of some kind. Think about the church as a house. Okay, if you can see this here, it's a little light. But it's a house with multiple doors. Decades ago, the church was seen as a house with one door. That was called worship. They come in, that's it, that's how we thought of it. That is not the case anymore. We really have to let go of that thinking. Worship is still one of the doors. Don't discount that. But in fact, think of the church as a house with 10 different doors. And they can come in from your small group ministry, your service ministry. Some people actually want to go to a committee and plan something, as crazy as that is. but they can do that. And maybe it's worship, whatever. So here's the key, though. However they choose to connect, you're able to capture their information and begin building a relationship with them, especially their email, and then begin to connect them into the broader ministries you offer. Now, this whole listing of ministries you see here, as I've gone through just article after article, I've tried to group, based on what people are looking for, the general offerings of a church. And I submit to you, these are the four kind of categories that at some level they're thinking about. So first, it tends to be in the research, but this can differ depending on the article you're reading, but it tends to be most people are looking for spiritual growth at some level. So that's first. Volunteering is very important. You can see all sorts of examples of ministries there. They're looking for support and friendships and relationships, especially on the other side of the pandemic. We've seen an increase in this area. Some of these lists that order kind of priorities for a visitor actually put adult social activities at the top, or like second with the sermon, as crazy as that is. But people are really hungry for this. We're about to launch an adult social ministry at my church here later this spring, and we think there's going to be really a good audience for it. Then you're following up with them, ideally within 24 hours. Texting is a great way to do that. You can email too, but texting, I think, is just a little more personal, a little more immediate. A great strategy can be, if they give you their email, is to put them onto an automated email list that will send them one email a week for 5 weeks. Urban Village Church has been doing this for years, and they've had real success with it. But tell your story over 5 weeks in this email, and that can be a way to connect with them. And it's critical that this whole welcome process, that the laity are the primary drivers of it. The clergy, we need to help, we need to be a part of it, but the laity, we really need your help because we're doing so many things on Sunday morning, and especially these first few visits, it's critical the laity are driving that. Then we go into the successive visits. It's critical that we remember people and begin to build a relationship. I had a visitor just come into our church, and it was her second or third visit, and I just remembered her name. I said, "Oh, hey, Tammy," and she lit up like a Christmas tree. She could not believe that the pastor remembered her name. And so I'd say that with the welcome team, have a list. Who are the people in the mix right now who are visiting? Really remember those names. Make sure the whole team knows them and can identify them. That makes a big difference. Figure out what they're looking for and speak to that. So something our marketing consultant has advised us to do is on our intake form, people fill out on the welcome pad during worship, and we can add this online as well. But instead of just getting their name and their information, we're going to add a series of boxes and say, what are you interested in? And they're going to check off what they're interested in. And then we're going to see that, and that's going to help us to know what they're really looking for, and then talk with them and offer that to them. Stress engagement over joining. Of course, we want people to officially join and become members, but not as an early step. So this comes from Horizon's stewardship and the Unstuck Church and their own surveys they've done. But they say that if you can have someone connect into a specific ministry beyond worship, it could be a committee, it could be a service activity or a small group, whatever it is, their engagement, wrap your head around this, goes up 3.5 to 4 times. 4 times. That is their overall satisfaction level with the church. It is the time they're willing to invest in the church, and it is their giving. So that becomes a difference in our whole strategy of how do we connect them as effectively as possible into the life of the church. Ask them about the onboarding emails in those first few visits, and ensure that they have the church app, as we'll talk about later. The app is a great way they can explore more about your church and learn on their own. Then we have the moment of joining. I'm not going to spend much time here, but when they join, that can be an opportunity for a very special celebration. And here's the key for marketing: see if they will tell their story of why they are joining your church. If they're not comfortable telling it in person, ask them if they'll tell it on video. That's one of our consultants has advised us. A lot of people are more comfortable with that, and they will do that for you. Finally, then, in our categories here is the first 1 to 2 years that they are a part of the church. You're not done. After they join, you have a lot of work still left to do. All right, and this is a very fragile time for them. People are always evaluating if a church is the right place for them. That's an assumption I always have in place. And you got to keep inspiring them and helping them engage over and over again, especially in these first couple of years. So I would keep all of your visitors who have been there several times and people who have recently joined. I'd have a special email list. I just keep them in the database, okay? And every quarter or so, I would send them a personal note, and you could send it out en masse because you can kind of put their name automatically at the top. But send them a note and say, hey, we know you're a part of people who have been here recently, or you've been here in the last year. We think this event is a great opportunity for you to come and meet more people, learn about the church, and then you have your welcome team there, and you're ready to meet those people. And then they go around. You don't make it obvious, but those people are kind of there to make sure they have a great experience. They try to help them meet more people and just smooth things over for them and integrating into the community. And the key outcomes you're looking for here in these first 1 to 2 years is that the person continues to engage more, they begin to grow spiritually, and here's the key: when they start to invite their friends, you've done it. That is the biggest telltale sign that they love your church. Okay, let's go into the what section. This is what we need to be doing at a very brass tacks level to facilitate church marketing. And I want to introduce you to the content triangle, all right? And this is just a simple tool to help us understand how these three components connect. So first, we need to be thinking about, as a church leadership, what ministries do we offer? All right, and if there's any gaps in what we offer and what people are looking for, we need to start there at a strategic level of how we plug those gaps. And then we start to talk about the content that we push out to our community, And this is the social media content you create. It's also internal communications. But you've got to have the ministries going to have content or stories to tell about those ministries, right? And finally, then we consider the channels. Where do we release all of this content that we are creating? So we're going to turn now to content, and I want to tell you about the importance of short vertical video. And we have two example videos here, and why do we talk about this? Because social media algorithms are disproportionately favoring this type of content above all other types of content. So you have two videos here. The first one I'll show you is of a pastor. She moved to a new house, and she had a little lake near her house, and she's just canoeing. Check this out. Let's see if it'll play. So there's nothing more to it, but it shows a dimension of her life. It helps her be relatable for people, right? That's a great opportunity for us as clergy, is to share parts of our lives on social media with people that we're comfortable doing. Okay?
You'll always find what you're looking for. When someone points out blue cars, suddenly there seems to be blue cars everywhere. And it's not that the world changed. It's that you started looking for them, and therefore started noticing them more. I think life works the same way. So as you step into this new year, what will you be looking for? If you focus on good things like hope, joy, gratitude, love, beauty, you'll begin to see it in unexpected places. But if you dwell on the negativity, frustration, or fear, you'll also find plenty of that.
So that is a pastor, and he has quite a lot of content. He's a UMC pastor who pushes out this content. I think he's in the Arizona area. But notice that he's not in clergy garb, right? He's in everyday clothes. He's walking. He's holding his phone. Okay, this is not professional video. He's just using his phone. He's talking. And then notice the subtitles. Okay, so you can use an app called Descript to automatically put those titles in. Why does that matter, the subtitles? Because most people, when they engage with these videos, they don't have their sound on. So be aware of that. You have to have the subtitles when you produce this. But it's personal. And imagine you're in the community, and he says this little 90-second message that connects with you. Well, now you're like, well, that guy seems relatable. And over time, you have several impressions of him online. You connect with him personally, because people like to connect with people, not just a monolithic organization. And you think, well, maybe I'll go hear him preach one day. Or you see him at a community event. It's all a part of a broader strategy. So let's now review a couple of documents together. And again, with these, we're just going to touch on them. I'm just going to kind of highlight a couple of things for you, and you can read them more in depth. The first are our content themes. And so here you can see a lot of themes that you can do in social media, content you could produce, and then you have your content mediums. Okay, so we can see on video the importance of short-form video. Wrap your head around this. The ideal video is 10 seconds. What can you communicate in 10 seconds? Aim for 60 seconds. I think, that would be a good balance for that. Here are some statistics on the importance of video. 81% of viewers prefer short-form video. 84% of people visit a website after watching a shared video. And 69% of viewers watching video on smartphones, that's how they like to watch them. So, you got to have the subtitles because of that. They don't always have their sound on. You can then see some tips for photography. Remember, you're telling a story with photography. That's the key. You can see some examples of photos that tell a story from my congregation. The importance of graphic posts. So here, graphic posts can be a great way to say thank you in a simple way. You can see some examples there. You can share a key statistic that you're celebrating as a church. And also, you can advertise your events with a simple graphic. And I would say this is an effective thing to do on social media and online. Instead of the 2 paragraphs of text, you can link the graphic to the text, but lead with the graphic. So you can see an example there from Kingswood UMC. And just realize that text is the least effective way to communicate with people in a social media environment especially. You need it with blogs, that's fine. But man, if you don't have a video or a graphic attached to your post online, you're not going to reach anybody. Okay, and then we go back to the content triangle, and let's talk about where we can release our content. So let's first talk about our communication strategies. We don't have a ton of time, and I want to leave time for your questions, so I'm going to go quick here, okay? And you can read these documents more yourself. So the communication strategies, this is like the ingredients we have in our cupboard that we're going to take out to build a marketing plan in a moment. You can see here at the top information about a church app, and Clayton Childers at Kingswood UMC. They've had great success with the church app. You'll find these apps are included with these all-in-one church programs like Tithely, Subsplash, and Planning Center. That's listed at the top of your communication strategies document. An app really becomes that digital hub on a person's smartphone to engage with the church. It's integrated with the website, but it is distinct from the website. You can see all the benefits there. And I think a key thing from Pastor Clayton is he says virtually everyone in his church uses the app now. It's gotten so effective they don't even need bulletin announcements for the most part. And he just has them go through their phone and interact with the announcements on Sunday morning and events, in part because then they can sign up or make a donation for an event right there because he's got them all trained to use it. You can see advice, and I know that's a radical thing to say, but that's what he says. So you can see information on how to build a good email newsletter. Some of our marketing staff has really helped us. I think there's great ideas there for you to consider. You can see all sorts of other ways to do internal communications. Then on external communications, the importance of word of mouth. To help people invite people to your church, give them things to invite people to. So on a Sunday morning, we'll send out an email right when they walk into worship and say, hey, in your inbox, we have this special event, forward that to people. Or you could put it on your social media and ask them to pull out their phone and forward that. The church app, you can use that. That's part of the benefit of the app is they can open up the event in the app and they can share it to people. So make it easy for them to invite. On the website, you can see information on how to build a website. What I want to emphasize here is surrounding community engagement. This is another idea from Pastor Clayton. His church has gone from 30 a Sunday to 80 a Sunday in the last year and a half. And he says one of the key elements to how they've been able to achieve that in the Deerfield community is they have a community engagement team. This is a group of several people, and they go to the vast majority of events in the Deerfield area. It's a farmer's market or a public concert. They are there with their garb on. They have a table. They're collecting information. And this is critical that over time they're meeting people on their turf. And that's helping others to feel comfortable then coming into the church to connect with their ministries. And the key is, as the community engagement team is working, is that they're capturing registrations, as you see on that next point. And that's also true if you offer events, for the community. Always, how do we make sure I get your email so I can tell you about us through those automated messages or whatever else you wish to send them, etc. And then that'll hopefully motivate them to engage more fully with your church. You have a lot of social media tips there we don't have time to go through. What I want to emphasize to you is at the bottom, the social media engagement circle. This is such a critical concept that when we produce content, we then need to engage users through likes and comments. This is key if you have a team of people to do this in the church. And then we study the analytics of what content generated engagement, what didn't, and that informs the future content that we produce. If you remember nothing else, that concept is at the center of interacting with people on social media. And then we have our marketing plan, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 5 minutes. I'm going to go through the small church plan, and then we're going to stop and I'm going to go to your questions. And so I have this plan I have for you. I spent hours and hours of time with our team building this for you. And we have it at two levels. The small church is kind of, I'm thinking 80 people a Sunday or less. And the medium to large is above that figure. All the components are generally the same. They're just scaled up for the bigger plan. But I think most of us in this room are in the small church marketing plan category. So let's look at that. And I'm just going to emphasize a couple of quick things. So one, it is difficult for me to know how to order these steps for you. This is how we have generally ordered them. We've grouped them into 3 phases to keep things a little bit more tidy for us. You might need 4 phases. But I think the phases can help your leadership to kind of be like, okay, we don't have to do all of this at once. We're working in this phase at that time. And here's what's key is pace yourself. Focus on maintaining quality as you move through these steps. You're going to get overwhelmed, I think, as you look through this because there's just a lot here, okay? But slow it down to what's realistic for your church. We think this is going to take us about 2 years. We're a year in, but 2 years total to implement this plan. Any plan needs to have key metrics. I don't have time to go through all the logic of these, but you can see that I've grouped them into in-person statistics to track on a monthly basis and social media. If you don't like these, change them. But I would submit to you, you need to have some kind of statistics that you are watching or metrics, as you're implementing these changes, because you need to know if you're actually shifting anything. Then you go into phase 1. So cast vision with your leadership about why we need a marketing plan in the first place. You can see things to share with them there. Request a budget. If you don't have money behind this, it's going to be difficult to do much. Find people to help you, the pastor. Okay, at the smaller church level, I've kept it simpler of the number of people in the mix. At the larger church level, you need more teams to facilitate this. Create a marketing plan. Well, you have a great template here. On the Google Drive, you can find a Word doc of this and just play with it. And you can adapt that for your leadership. Create a photo video library to store your content. Standardize your brand. We have lots of great information in the resource folder on how to standardize your brand in these ways. Look through that. Begin storytelling during worship. One of the things we do at First UMC is we have a generosity moment, and every week we say 2 to 3 minutes of how our church is making a difference in the community and world. And it really, I think, has made a difference for people. Start online worship, because visitors need that. Redesign your church e-news. You have resources in the communication strategies document for that. Event ads. The more that you can standardize your process for putting together event ads and releasing those, whether it be within the church or the broader community, then you can save time and then take that time you've saved and put it into content that truly inspires people beyond communicating what events you offer. But you have to get this down. You have to really get the event ads simple. Okay, social media. You can see in this phase, I've broken it up into phases of working on social media. And let's skip to phase 2. So now you start to build in a tracking mechanism for these statistics. Really work on capturing registrations at events and have a system for that. Build your community engagement team and decide what they're able to do. Now in the social media phase, you really start to build out, let me end my timer here, a lot of the content beyond event advertisements that's going to engage with your community. And then consider putting together these quarterly event brochures. Those are great to mail to your congregation, to release online, to have at events. Finally, phase 3, start using an all-in-one church app. My church is thinking about using Tithely, but later on in the process, especially for the church app itself we talked about earlier. That's just one component of these broader all-in-one platforms. You can see all the dimensions of what they offer there and more. And then work on your welcome and follow-up process. So I bet all of us have a welcome and follow-up process at some level in place today. That's why I put this at the end. But I think that in that third phase, it's the time now that you got marketing really moving, hopefully got more people coming in and connecting to the church, to then just continue to polish that process and define the steps and have it hit hand and glove with the marketing that you are doing. So that's the plan. We weren't able to get to the how section. That was the lightest section of this presentation. Most of that content is in the slides and in the folder for you. Let me now use our last 10 minutes to turn to your questions. And if I don't get to your question, you can also just email me, and I'll be glad to get back to you. I can't see your hands with the light with my vision, so just say my name, Scott, and fire away. Right. That's a critical question that's on all of our minds. And I think that's why we go back to marketing to the spiritual seekers who are in the millennial category. It's also leveraging social media, which is one piece of this strategy. So Instagram is where the millennials and Gen Xers are that you're probably looking to reach, not Facebook. Now, I would say be on Facebook because the boomers are there, and you want to be connecting to both groups. TikTok is growing rapidly, and it's very interesting. Okay, in my community, from the research data says only 2% of my community is on TikTok. But it's disproportionately younger audiences are there. It's going to continue to grow. So I'd say, but Instagram is the key. Be on there, and then work with your young families. They know other young people. So it can be having them come to the community engagement team events when you're out in the community, or having them invite people. Something that's been very effective at Grace UMC is they have a listing of all the mothers in the church. And when they have a special event that's community-oriented, the marketing person sends an email to all the mothers, because those mothers are on these Facebook mothers groups, and they say, hey, can you put, because the marketing person cannot post to those groups, they're closed groups. And when the mothers do, they take that information, they post it on Facebook, and all the mothers from the community come to these special events. And then you try to capture their information and build a relationship and start that whole flow. So I hope one of those ideas might be helpful to you. Yes, Joe, hello. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm. Mhm. I fully agree with you, and yes, exactly. And I hope through the house with many doors is speaking exactly to your point. So I fully agree. I think what I have seen in some of the information from Barna is that if a couple has children, then the children's ministries is much more important. If they don't, it's not. So it just depends, I think, on the family. But I think depending on the charts you look at, some of them don't have it high on the list. That is interesting. Others, yes. Well, it can send push notifications. That is a huge thing that most of us are probably not doing. So think about it. When your app sends you a push notification on your phone, you see it right away, right? Okay, or a text. All right, we tend to send emails. Now, sometimes we'll do a mass text, but probably not much, except for, say, an emergency. But, say, what Kingswood does is whenever they have a worship service on Sunday, they send out a push notification. And especially like special worship services around Advent, they send it. It's a great way to communicate with people, but they have to enable push notifications. That's the key when you roll out the app to them. And then it's centralizing all your listing of events, your online giving, your online worship. They have a digital Bible. They can sign up for things there. It's all the functions of the community are in their pocket. They just download it from the App Store. And then they just click these simple buttons. And I think it removes a lot of the friction of people saying, well, how do I do that? How do I get to that? And you also don't have to put QR codes in your bulletin all over the place for things. Because you just say it's in the app. Go there. And then all the links are centralized. Does that make sense? Others? Yes. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Interesting question. And I'm not sure I have all the answers for that by any means. But I think what would be some broad answers that might help you, sir, is to study both generational trends. It'd be interesting to see what's the main generations in your community, and also then to look at ethnic groups and what's important to them, perhaps, and map that together and look at interests. If your church has Spanish-speaking ministries, that could be something that's important to emphasize in your marketing materials, just given that language barrier. That could be good. So what I'm really talking about is market research. And we should all do that. I think what Communications has given us with the Spiritual Seekers is very interesting, but it's also good that we use Mission Insight, okay, that our conference pays for. And if you don't know about how to use it, reach out to Christian Kuhn with Congregational Development, and they have all this great information. Some of my comments have been prepared using that information. And you can look at your specific community and what the research data says is important to people, what the makeup is, and that can then help you inform how you're communicating to your community. Mm-hmm. Others? Well, again, feel free to email me with any questions you may have. I'll stick around if you have any questions here as well. Check out the online drive. I'm going to send you all an email because I have your signups, and I'll send you the link to the online drive, or you can scan that code, the QR code in the front of your packet. You'll find there to access it. Thank you so much for your presence here today, and blessings on your church marketing efforts. Thank you.